Welcome back, viewers. You're watching the Savera and I'm Shefali. Donald Trump's tariff war continues as his explosive import duties on countries, including the whopping 104% on China, come into effect as he spoke of imposing tariffs on pharmaceutical companies coming into the United States from foreign countries. The US president has been hinting for months that the drug industry will be targeted. However, he extended it from the expansion rounds of reciprocal tariffs that he announced on April 2nd, dubbed him as Liberation Day. Now, what did Donald Trump say about pharmaceutical tariffs? Trump announced on April 8th that the US will soon announce a major tariff on pharmaceutical imports. The US president said that during a National Republican Congressional Committee dinner, we're going to be announcing very shortly a major tariff on pharmaceutical. When they hear that, they will leave China. They will leave other places because most of their product is sold here. He further added that the tariff will incentivize drug companies to move their operations to the US. He said, once we do that, we're going to come rushing back into our country because we are the big market. Trump noted the advantage we have over everybody is that we are the big market. Now, what's the rate of Trump's tariffs could announce on drug? The president did not divulge details on pharma tariffs. However, during an interaction with reporters in February, he said the tariffs are imported on drugs would likely start at 25% and could go higher. During his NRCC interaction on Tuesday, Trump did not mention countries from which the US imports pharmaceuticals. However, trade policy moves under his earlier administration had focused on India and China. Both countries are major suppliers of generic drugs and active pharmaceutical ingredients to the US. Trump has been vocal about America's dependence on foreign-made drugs and has promised time and again to reverse the trend. The US administration is reportedly considering using Section 232 powers, which allows tariff on imports deemed a threat to national security, to introduce the levies. However, a formal investigation required before implementation has not yet been identified. How big are India's pharma exports to the US? India is the third largest producer and major supplier of generic medicines. The US is the largest market for Indian drug makers, accounting for 31.3% of the total export. In financial year 2024, India's pharma exports were valued at $27.9 billion, of which $8.7 billion were to the US. These could be hit if the Trump administration slaps additional tariff on the industry. Indian drug makers play a big role in the US healthcare. 47% of all generic prescriptions to the US were supplied by Indian companies in 2022, according to a report by IQVIA Institute. This amounts to 4 out of 10 of all prescriptions filled in the country. Indian pharmaceutical companies manufactured 15% of the biosimilar volume used by US patients in 2022. Out of the top 10 therapy areas by prescription volume in the US, Indian companies supplied more than half of the prescriptions for 5 categories: mental health, that's 62%, hypertension, that's 60%, liquid regulators, 58%, anti-ulcerants, 56%, and nervous system disorders, 55%. The US depends a lot on Indian drugs, and this trade benefits them financially. According to the figures cited by Union Health Secretary Punya Salilya Srivastava last year, India-made medicines have helped the US healthcare system save $219 billion in 2022 and $1.3 trillion between 2013 and 2022. Now, what would pharma tariffs mean for India? Will US consumers be hit? Imposing high tariffs on pharmaceutical companies or importers would raise production cost and erode price competitiveness, hurting Indian drug manufacturers. Leading companies like Sun Pharma, Dr. Reddy's, Aurobindo Pharma, Zydus Life Sciences and Glad Pharma reportedly earn 30 to 40% of their revenue from the US market. The upcoming tariff will impact them. However, tariffs on pharma will not only impact Indian manufacturer but also US consumer. Now, if tariffs are raised significantly, some Indian generic drug manufacturers might struggle to absorb costs. In such a case, they are likely to pass it on to the insurers and customers. The higher tariffs would lead to the rise of the prices of the drug, inflation, and a shortage of medicine in the US. Like with all the levies, the impact will be felt by both manufacturers and consumers. According to a report by Citi, pharma companies are expected to pass on the hike to payers. If the costs are not passed on to the patients, the entire supply chain will have to absorb the increase. However, the ongoing trade talks between India and the US could somehow make a difference. According to Generis, a multinational financial firm, removing import duty on pharma imports from the US is achievable. After Trump's announcement, shares of pharmaceutical companies fell up to 10% in the Bombay Stock Exchange. In trade a day, Lupin, Gland Pharma, and Zydrus Life Sciences were some of the losers of the index. However, international brokerage CLSA said that the risk of high tariffs on pharma products is lower than the markets are currently pricing in, as the US healthcare system sees major saving benefits because of Indian generics. Now, which other countries will be hit by Trump's pharma tariffs? China is also a major supplier of pharmaceuticals to the US. Between 2020 and 2022, US imports of China-made pharmaceuticals have grown by 485% from $2.1 billion in 2020 later to $10.3 billion in 2 years, rising China's share of US pharmaceutical imports from 2.5% to over 6%. Trump has already imposed 104% duties on goods from China. The pharma tariffs, if introduced, will further increase tensions between the two enemies, already on the brink of a trade war. That was all for now on this topic. Stay tuned to the Savera, download the app, follow us on various social media platforms.